Somewhere in Egypt, in a sealed chamber that has not been opened since 30 BC, lies the most important undiscovered burial in the ancient world. We know she was buried. Ancient sources confirm it. Octavian himself arranged for Cleopatra and Mark Antony to be interred together with full royal honors somewhere near Alexandria. He allowed it because he was politically astute enough to understand that a dignified burial was less dangerous to his narrative than the martyrdom a public desecration would have created. So the tomb exists. It has existed, sealed, for over 2,000 years, and nobody has found it. This is not a cold case. This is one of the most actively pursued archaeological investigations on Earth, and it is closer to a resolution than most people realize. To understand why finding it matters so much, you have to understand what it would contain. Every surviving account of Cleopatra's life was written by someone with a reason to get it wrong. Roman poets commissioned by Octavian's political program, historians working within a cultural framework that had already decided what she meant before they put pen to papyrus. Greek and Latin writers separated from the events they described by decades or centuries of hostile transmission. Not one document in Cleopatra's own hand has survived. Not one Egyptian administrative record from her reign remains in the form she produced it. Not one first person account of her governance, her thinking, or her understanding of her own historical significance exists anywhere in the accessible ancient record. What we have instead is the Roman version, and the Roman version was written by the people who destroyed her. A sealed royal burial chamber created under her own authority in 30 BC, before Octavian's narrative program had completed its work, would change all of that. Ptolemaic royal burial practice embedded biographical and theological texts in the burial context that reflected the deceased ruler's own self-presentation. Language approved during their lifetime, inscriptions executed according to their specifications, grave goods chosen for their personal and political significance, documents placed as records of earthly achievement. These are not simply artifacts, they are primary source evidence from before the censorship, from before the rewriting, from before Octavian decided what history would say. A sealed Cleopatra burial would be the first account of her life written entirely on her own terms that the modern world has ever had access to. That is not an archaeological discovery. That is a conversation with history that has been waiting 2,000 years to happen. Now let us talk about where the search actually stands. The most compelling active investigation is at Taposiris Magna, a temple complex approximately 45 kilometers west of Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast. Egyptian archaeologist Kathleen Martinez has been excavating there for nearly 2 decades, and what her team has recovered across successive seasons of fieldwork has moved the site from a speculative candidate to the most credible location currently under active investigation. Coins bearing Cleopatra's portrait, royal artifacts consistent with Ptolemaic burial contexts, a network of tunnels beneath the main temple structure that ancient sources would not have described if they did not serve a purpose beyond ordinary worship, and most recently, a previously unmapped underground corridor revealed by seismic activity that sent international excavation teams back to the site with new technology and renewed urgency. The theological logic behind the identification is elegant and specific. Taposiris Magna means Great Tomb of Osiris. Cleopatra identified herself so completely with Isis, the consort of Osiris, that choosing a temple dedicated to Osiris for her burial alongside Antony, whom she presented as the new Dionysus, and sometimes as Osiris himself, would have been a theologically precise and personally meaningful choice. It would also have been a strategically intelligent one. A sacred site of this significance would have faced significant resistance from the local priesthood and population if Octavian's forces had attempted desecration, which may be exactly why it was chosen. But Taposiris Magna is not the only front in this investigation. The submerged royal quarter of ancient Alexandria sits 3 to 8 meters below the surface of the eastern harbor, largely unexcavated in anaerobic conditions that may have preserved organic materials unavailable from any land site. French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio has been working these waters since the 1990s, recovering thousands of artifacts, including colossal statues, architectural elements, and inscribed blocks from the palace complex where Cleopatra lived and died. What his team has mapped represents only a fraction of what the seabed holds. The ancient sources confirm she built her mausoleum within the palace complex. Portions of that complex are now underwater. The possibility that her burial exists not in a desert tomb but 30 feet below the surface of Alexandria's eastern harbor is not archaeological speculation. It is a genuine probability that underwater excavation technology is now advanced enough to investigate systematically. And then there is the technology itself, which is changing the terms of this investigation faster than any previous generation of researchers could have anticipated. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of the kind being conducted at Taposiris Magna and other sites around Alexandria can identify significant subsurface architectural features at depths of several meters without disturbing the ground above them. Multispectral satellite imaging can identify buried structures through surface soil signatures that are invisible to the human eye. Underwater photogrammetric mapping can produce three-dimensional models of the seabed at resolutions that would have been impossible a decade ago. Each season brings new data. Each new data set refines the search parameters for the finds still outstanding. The tomb has not been found yet, but the search has never been better equipped, and the stakes have never been more clearly understood. When it is found, and serious archaeologists believe it will be, the discovery will not simply add a chapter to ancient history, it will reopen a verdict that has been accepted without sufficient evidence for 2,000 years, a verdict written by the winning side about the person they defeated, a verdict that the primary source evidence, when it finally surfaces from wherever it has been sealed since 30 BC, may contradict at every significant point. That is what is waiting to be found, not simply a tomb, not simply artifacts and grave goods and inscribed stone, the other side of the story. If you want to be there when that story finally surfaces, follow Cleopatra Unfiltered and drop a comment telling me what you think will be the most significant thing found inside that chamber when the door finally opens. Because I think about that question every single day, and I think the answer is going to change everything.